Not so long ago, in the Midwest of America, Emily was doing a review of Scott Pilgrim. Anyway, we're talking about Scott Pilgrim, the books today. I will review the movie at some point. I think that's definitely going to be a review for this channel. But today we're talking about the books. We're going to review the books, and then we're going to review the movie, and then we're going to review the anime. I already reviewed the game on my other channel, Azura Game Club, so if you like Scott Pilgrim and you want to check out my review of the game, go check that out. I actually have the special edition sitting over there. It's like a big special edition. It's pretty cool. I waited forever to get that. But anyway, you can see all that in the other video. Today we're talking about the book of Scott Pilgrim, the comic book, that is. You know, the comics were better than the movies. No, I'm just kidding. That's a line from the movie. And we'll talk about that in a separate day, but I will reference the movie a lot because that is my first exposure to Scott Pilgrim, was the movie. So, I remember seeing the movie back when it came out. My friends took me to it. I didn't care for it, honestly. I really didn't know what was going on. Like, I think it was too fast-paced for me. I think I'd maybe seen some of the other Edgar Wright movies at that point. I don't remember, but, like, it was weird. Like, the cuts made me think that, like, it was something intentional to do with the character or something. Like, he was mentally ill and he was just having, like, these blackouts or something. Because there's, like, that line where they're like, Scott, you only played one note that entire song. And it's meant to be funny, but then it's like, what happened to him? And he's like, blacking it out. But I didn't realize at the time that that was kind of the intention. It was... In the comic, it kind of makes sense because you just kind of cut from panel to panel. And it's just like a clever storytelling thing. At the time, I just thought, well, what is this? This is weird, you know? Like, I don't understand this. And that's what happened with Scott Pilgrim. It took me a while to understand it. A few watches of the movie. I really didn't like the movie for several watches. And then after maybe 4 or 5 times of watching it, I'm like, I got into it. I actually started to understand it. And, yeah, and I really liked it. And I thought it was funny. There's so many good lines in there that are actually directly from the book. Also, I have the colored, like, versions of the book. I have all of the versions of the book, but, you know, it's, like, actually colorful now. Like, if you look at the actual, like, original book, it's all in black and white, you know, kind of like a manga style. But, yeah. You know, oh, there is parts that are kind of in black. But you see, they still have color in there. And actually, they use these in the movie as well. But I really like the coloration because it just looks a lot freaking better, you know. It's so cool. Like, I love these colored you have to look, you have to read these. If you're gonna read it, like, you have to read these for sure. I have all 3 volumes. I have, like, the box set. It's over there on my shelf. I should have brought it out. I'll bring it out for one of the other reviews, but yeah. So, like, I just read the first book for right now. I've read them all in the past. Scott Pilgrim was, like, a big part of, you know, my later high school years, and then my early 20s. I started really getting into it and enjoying it, and I read all the books, and you know, it really meant a lot to me. I was kind of Scott Pilgrim at the time, you know, in the sense of some nerdy kid looking for love, and, you know, that's how it is, and that's how it was, and it's still how it is, kind of still. You know, he's just very relatable as a character, Scott Pilgrim is. So yeah, you gotta love him. He's lovable and he's funny. He's a little weird sometimes, you know. Obviously, there's some lines in this that kind of aren't great anymore. Later on, in one of the later volumes, he's, like, trying to break up with knives. I guess that's, like, gotta be the 2nd volume, right? And it's, like, he's like, are you even allowed to, like, date outside your race? That was, like, a kind of a bad one. And, Of course, you know, the infamous elephant in the room, let's talk about it. You know, he's dating a 17-year-old Chinese girl, but it's like, you know, not great, obviously. He's 23, so there's some bad implications there, for sure. But, it's really, like, and not that I'm justifying this at all, but it's like, they're barely even dating until, like, I mean, especially in the movie, they barely are. I mean, a little ways in, she starts getting more physical on him, you know, started kissing him and hugging him and stuff, but, like, at the beginning of the book, it's like, you're dating a high schooler, like, did you guys, like, do it yet? And like, the other guy says, and he's like, we haven't even held hands yet, you know, or whatever, like, we almost held hands once, but she got embarrassed, or whatever, like, you know, that kind of thing. I love how in the book, too, like, they ask how, they met or whatever, like, Scott's friends, and he basically tells the abridged version of the story about the bus, like, and how the mom was on it. Actually, he tells a longer version, technically, than the movie tells, about how he, like, helped pick up Knives' books on the bus that one time or whatever. But anyway, and then Kim's like, is that it? Is that the whole story for real? And then that's, like, a line that they used in the movie later on, when they're at the rocket there. And I will say that in the book, not that he's not kind of still weird and, like very odd around Ramona at first, like, but I feel like in the movie, especially, it's played up to be, like, she thinks he's really weird, too. And in the book, it's more so that she's kind of endeared by this, you know, and then she explains the whole subspace highway thing, which is actually a thing in the book, like, in the movie, they just kind of pass it off as, like, a joke, you know? And he's like, is it from, like, Mario 2? And she's like, no, it's not like that at all. It's just, it's funny. They make little references like that. I kind of like that. In the movie, they have a lot of musical references. Like, they have the Zelda fairy fountain theme and, like, Sonic noises and stuff. Man, and the movie just has such a great cast. I mean, we'll talk about that when we get there, but I can't help but hear the book and the movie people's voices. I guess I heard that the anime is kind of flawed or whatever, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes at whatever point, but yeah, so the first book is mainly about Knives and him dating at first, and then, like, I like the contrast, because there's, like, this contrast where you see a day of them hanging out, and he's, like, totally into it, and then after he meets Ramona, and that's, like, more of a thing, and, like, after he's been to the party, and he, like, thinks he might have a chance to get Ramona or whatever, his mind becomes obsessed with Ramona, then you see another day with Knives, and he's just totally disconnected from that situation. I like that. I think that's a good contrast, and you show kind of how he's moved on, and he wants Ramona instead. And I like how he's kind of, I don't want to say damaged too, but, like, you know, obviously Ramona has a lot of problems. She has the 7 evil ex-boyfriends or whatever, or 7 evil exes. Obviously one of them is not a boyfriend, is a girlfriend, but spoilers for volume 3 or whatever. Is that the next volume? I think that's probably volume 2. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, 2 or 3. I don't know. They don't really show it on the covers. Anyway, you know, he's in a band. He's, oh, the contrast. Yeah, so, and obviously he should have broke up with Knives there, but he just didn't really know how to do it. And the book makes a little point that I didn't even notice, which is interesting, because she does, in the movie, start dressing more like Ramona at some point. But apparently, early in this book, or later in this book, but, you know, early in the series as a whole, she starts trying to dress more like Kim, because she thinks Kim is really cool. So that's a detail I didn't notice before. That's actually kind of interesting. there's a lot more to expand upon in the book, and that's really what the book is. It's the source material for the movie. And the thing about the movie is that it's such a great adaptation of these books. It is one of my favorite movies. It's my second favorite movie of all time. And, you know, because it just makes me smile. And this book, too, makes me smile because it has a lot of the lines from the movie. There's just so... The humor is so good. And, you know, Brian Lee O'Malley, who wrote the books, they're Canadian-Korean, I guess. He has such a good and quirky sense of humor. I love all of his books, basically, that I've read so far. I read the Scott Pilgrims. I read Seconds, which comes after that, which is a different story. And then I also read Lost at Sea, which is really underrated. I really like that one a hell of a lot. It's really cool. This music's so good, by the way, from the game. The music in the movie is really good, too. Anyway, so... yeah, I really like the humor. The art style in the book is amazing. Obviously, in the movie, it's great, too. I can stop talking about the movie so much. We'll talk about that when we get to the movie. So I love that. It looks really good. For the most part, it's just very, very well done. Very well drawn. All the characters are funny, and they all have their own little thing going on. You know, you got, like, Steven Stills, he's the talent. You got Kim, she's kind of the sarcastic, like, drummer friend. Young Neil, of course. Ramona, who's great. You know, she's mysterious. But, like... And I like... Ramona kind of doesn't get a lot of lines in the movie earlier on. Like, they're all kind of just, like, being weirded out by Scott. But, like... like what I was trying to say earlier, in the book, she actually kind of, like, explains the whole subspace thing, and then she's like, oh, that's why this all happened. That's why you're, like, so obsessed with me, and I'm sorry, like, that I went through your head or whatever. Like, apparently they don't have that in Canada or whatever. That's the whole line. Anyway, but it's just different. It's a different kind of dialogue, you know, like... And I kind of like it better, almost, than the movie. Because in the movie, it just seems like he's, like, being really insistent and persistent in that sense that he just, like, won't leave this girl alone. So she just kind of gives him a chance. So that's kind of, you know, that's not great, obviously. But in the book, it actually seems like, oh, you know, he's being persistent, but she actually is like, oh, maybe I'll give this guy a shot. Maybe we can at least be friends or something, you know? Seems like she's more interested in it early on, anyway. And they have, like, a whole dynamic and a whole relationship that, like, barely gets explored in the movie, I guess. Like, not that it doesn't get explored, but it's just really streamlined. It all gets kind of cut down to save on time. I think the movie and its pacing is so good. It's so well done. It's you know, very flawless in that regard, but it does cut a lot of stuff out, and probably for the best, but I'm just saying there's a lot more content in this book and stuff. It is the more complete version of the story. So, because the movie is an adaptation, you know, which is, you know, it is what it is. It's an adaptation, so you cut a lot of stuff. There's a whole character in here that's like, I can't remember her name, but, like, Scott's friend from when he's younger and whatever. She's not even in the frickin' movie. But yeah. This girl. It's fucking... I can't even remember her name, but, yeah, anyway, so... Totally friggin' cut. So they cut a lot of stuff, you know? There's a lot of stuff that they cut out. Oh, I didn't even mention Wallace. Wallace Wells, his gay roommate, you know? It's great. So many good jokes with that. Like, I like all the stuff, like, where they're in the apartment, too, and it, like, points out all of his stuff. Little jokes like that are, like, side jokes, like, jokes in the background that are, like, little words and stuff. All of that, like, captioning, I guess, is just really funny. And they do a lot of that in the movie, too, which it gives it a unique kind of style, you know, and I really appreciate that. But yeah, as a first book, too, I think it does a lot of good at getting you interested in Scott Pilgrim. And then, like, the fight scene kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, you know, that also happens in the movie there, but they're like, oh yeah, you messed with the wrong guy. Scott Pilgrim's, like, the best fighter on this side of the Providence. It's like, okay. I love how in the book, too, like, he sends him the email, right? Like, you see that in the movie. But it's like, he sends him a letter, too, and he's like, I personally delivered that in a blizzard, or whatever. And then, of course, there's the cool line, in the movie, it's different, because he's like, pirates aren't in this season, is what he says. Because Scott's like, what's with your outfit? You're dressed like a pirate. Are you a pirate? And he's like, pirates aren't in this season. That's what was in the movie. And then in the book, it's like, pirates are in this season. Apparently in the anime, this is like the one thing I've been spoiled for. That line's not even in there. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen there. Are the evil X's still like a big deal? Or like what's going on with that? Like, I don't know. We'll have to find out. But I thought it'd be better to review the source material before we like kind of jump into the other stuff. So yeah. And it's cool, like, in the book, they actually have, like, you know, like, you can play the song that they have, like, the notes to play the song or whatever. I don't know, I'm not a musician, but, yeah, so, you know, and obviously going forward, this whole dynamic between Knives and, like, Scott and then Ramona, this like love triangle sort of thing is going to be a bigger deal, and then this is kind of the start of that. Oh yeah, the whole line, like he goes and talks to that one guy and he's like, do you know a girl who's got the hair like this? And he's like, oh yeah, that's Ramona Flowers. Like I kind of like that better in the movie because he's like he has a drawing. He's like, do you know the girl like this? And he's like, oh yeah, that's Ramona Flowers. Like I just thought this is funny. It's a great delivery, you know, so, and I like kind of Scott and Ramona's awkward, like, sort of chemistry there is nice. Like I said, more to speed and more well done in the book, I feel like. I feel like that kind of comes off better. It doesn't come off as, like, as creepy. It's still, like, being a creep or like it even says stalker in the book, you know, at once, and it does say that in fucking the movie too, obviously, but yeah, you know, it's hard not to be perceived as like a stalker. I get it from both angles, honestly. Or like, you know, coming off as a creep, you know, it's difficult, so I kind of feel it from both sides, you know, but obviously I don't know what he would have done to not be as weird about it, but the thing with all of that, though, is that at the end of the day, Ramona kind of reciprocates that. And maybe it was eventually, obviously, so that's not great, but she never, like, purely shuts this guy down and is just like, fuck you, go away, I have no interest in being with you or hanging out with you or anything. So, you know, it's really all kind of comes down to, like, it's a whole gray area. Anyway, my point is, I think the book did a little bit of a better job of doing that. Some of that is like, Michael Cera too, or his performance, or the way he was directed. He's kind of more of an asshole in the movie for whatever reason. He's more lovable in the books, I feel like, and that's definitely a strength, I think, of the books. Maybe one of the only flaws with the movie. It's kind of hard to unnotice once you notice it in the movie, but yeah. For now, he's still our lovable little Scott Pilgrim. I love his sister too, Stacy. You know, like his parents are apparently, you know, like a thing in the books, right? So that's weird because they never get brought up in the fucking movie. So that's interesting. Just more expansion of the lore and the world of Scott Pilgrim. You know, of Canada there. So, but yeah. That's it. It's a great first volume, and I think it's a great start to Scott Pilgrim, and it kind of establishes his world and, you know, his precious little world or whatever. Is it the second one? No, that's Versus the World. Oh, Precious Little Life. That's the first one. That's why I'm saying that. Yeah, of course. Of course. I knew that. Of course. Scott Pilgrim, Precious Little Life, Versus the World. That's what the movie took the title from. Infinite Sadness, Gets It Together, Versus the Universe, and Finest Hour, you know, so kind of generic names, but they're nice, they're good enough. I love Scott Pilgrim, I love most things about the movie, the books. I don't really have a lot of problems with either, but it only gets better, you know, from here. There's so much goodness in each of these, and all of the evil X's, and, you know, all of his even like him and Ramona have problems, and that's realistic, you know, and that's kind of cool. They get there in the end, but, you know, freaking Gideon is just hanging over their head the whole time. Do you know about the League? I mean, you know, that's not his line, but he created the League and whatever. The League of Evil X's. And it's just like, it's so absurd too, this concept of like, if you're gonna date me, you have to fight my 7 evil ex-boyfriends. And that's just, that's what it is. That's how it happens, you know? So, there's comedy, there's romance, there's, you know, friends just being friends. It's just a fun story. There's fantasy elements, which I like, you know, video game references, movie and song references and stuff. So cool stuff, you know. I aspire to make something as good as this someday. So yeah, Scott Pilgrim Volume 1. Good stuff, you know. Looking forward to Volume 2. So until next time, this has been Emily. Stick around, subscribe to join the Bad Girl Coven. Azura Book Club, Scott Pilgrim, Book 1. So, until next time, you know, like Johnny Millennium. Actually, Scott Pilgrim, I think I probably mentioned this before, but it obviously, we're talking about it from the movie. Obviously, it doesn't have anything to do with the books, but Scott Pilgrim actually introduced me to my favorite band, Metric, so gotta give him that. But anyways, stick around, subscribe, never forget that magic comes from the heart, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Emily